And that's the end of the first half. As the teams head to the locker room, the Spartans lead the Bulldogs by a score.
You guys stink.
Geez, Coach, we're only down a couple of points.
No, I mean you guys really smell. You need to hit the showers. And here, I got every one of you new bars of soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Each bar is artisan crafted using natural ingredients and essential oils. They also have shave soaps, colognes, beard balm, and a whole lot more. Now get in there.
But Coach, we have another half to play.
I don't care. I can't stand to be around you.
A few minutes later.
All right, bring it in tight. You guys are still playing terrible, but you're smelling great out there. Now listen, you're going to need to stock up for the rest of the season. We got a lot of tough games left. So go to sterlingsoap.com after the game. That's STIRLING soap.com. You got that?
Yes, Coach.
Great. Sterlingsoap.com on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Sterlingsoap.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back here on the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. I'm Dana Augusta coming to you on this Sunday night, right in the middle of the NBA playoffs, and also joining us here once again for another episode is my partner in crime, my cohort in the world of sports history, none other than Charles Combs. Chuck, how are you doing on this Sunday evening?
Man, doing pretty good, D. Doing pretty well, man. Just ready to kind of dive into all of these NBA players. I'm sure there will be some surprises and perhaps some disagreements. And this is the point in time and the appointed hour to kind of sift through all said things.
All right, man. So what we're doing here tonight, as the title suggests, is that we did a similar episode a few months back dealing with our baseball players that we put together an all-star team of baseball greats that we've seen from 1980 till today, and we did something else very similar to that during the NFL playoffs. And tonight is the NBA's turn, as far as like our players that we grew up watching, who we think is the best of the best at certain positions of the NBA. Chuck is going to do the Eastern Conference, and I'm going to put together a Western Conference squad of all-stars that we have seen in our lifetimes. And going into this, you have a picture in your mind of how you want this team to look, or you have a general idea of what this team is going to look like. But then you start doing research, and then you get like, wait a minute, I forgot about this guy. Or I forgot about, should I pick this guy over this guy? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that I dealt with that, not necessarily on my first team, but our second team. Now, let me explain the format, okay? It's all dealing with players that we have seen play from like 1980 till today, okay? And the players that we're talking about are what I consider all-time greats, okay? But we also have a little favoritism in it because these are players that we actually seen and we actually were kind of fans of. But we took some objectivity into this as well. So it's not like our favorites, but it's like from what I believe is the best players on the Western Conference, as well as what Chuck thinks is the best players in the Eastern Conference. Also, we're going to put together a makeshift three-point contest and a makeshift dunk contest. Chuck picks 3 players from the East, and I pick 3 players from the West in each round. And also, we're going to talk about who we think were better dunkers. So all of that is going to be coming up in this episode. So, Chuck, you ready to roll?
Let's move.
Okay, is there anything you want to add to this before we start announcing these players?
Well, kind of similarly to how I did the NFL, if it was a game I had to win, but what was really much, much more troubling about this is it's a lot of players on here that I had to consider that are like my personal favorites, but from a merit standpoint,
right? Unfortunately,
I couldn't add them. But it's a lot of players because I could really make an entire 12 based on just the players. They were very good players and great players in their own respect. Just some of my favorite players that were, not at the forefront per se. Some kind of some unknown names perhaps, or some how would you say, some deeply underrated all-star level players. But anyway, I kind of did it mostly based on merit. And then I may give some of those guys a shout out in terms of, an honorable mention because I think I
Right.
should acknowledge them.
Right. And I did the same. I did the same as far as like, especially for my second team and as far as like my reserve. When we came up with this idea, I had my starting five already picked. I just had to fine tune it a couple of things. Now with mine, it was like I have a large amount of different players to choose from in like maybe three different positions, where it was very slim on one position here out west you know. And I think that we may have a couple players that may end up on both squads, East and West. So, which is fine, which is fine. I really think that we may have a couple that we've seen that play both Eastern Conference and Western Conference, and both have some kind of merit to be on both teams. So, without further ado, Chuck, since you're the Eastern Conference, okay, and the last couple of times I went first, it is your turn to go first. And since you're the Eastern Conference, who is your starting five on your Eastern Conference?
Starting five for the Eastern Conference. We got at the point guard, in my opinion, second best point guard of all time. Dude that you despise very much. So it takes me very good pleasure and wonderful pleasure in announcing my point guard, which is none other than Isaiah Zeke Thomas. You can't stand him, and I love it.
Okay.
And and you can't, he's without question the second greatest point guard of all time, second only to Magic. 12-time All-Star. 2 rings. Two-time All-Star MVP, 1 Finals MVP, 5-time All-NBA, NBA. And he's the only person that kind of, he won not only 1 chip, but multiple chips without another top 75 player. Then he can also, how are some of these skins you can put on the wall? He whooped Jordan and Pippen multiple times, as well as Phil Jackson. He beat the vaunted Celtics. He beat Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish. He put them out of there, I think twice, but really in their prime, he beat them once. Should have been twice if not for his own boneheaded mistake in 1987.
Yeah.
Then he also beat Pat Riley, the Showtime Lakers once. That should have been twice, if not for perhaps a sprained ankle, and especially I would say at best a questionable call at the end of Game 6 that put Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on the free throw line. So in terms of who he beat, his resume is unparalleled in my opinion. So point guard, Isaiah Thomas. I could go into points per game and all that, but I think these guys speak for themselves. So
I mean, he is a legend. He is. I'm not a fan of his, as you've quite eloquently pointed out. Never really. I mean, I got to give credit where credit is due. He's one of the greatest point guards of all time. Me personally, I'm not really a fan of his. So Isaiah Thomas, which by the way, my mom's second favorite player of all time, behind Dr. J. My mom loved Isaiah Thomas.
Yes, sir.
So
the reason why I love that woman, she like Dr. J too, and she could do good fish and potato salad. Man, she just had everything you need, man. Shout out Mama Augusta. Shout out
Mom.
Yes,
Unfortunately,
sir.
she's no longer with us. Mama Jerry. We
Yes,
miss you
sir.
down here. But go ahead. Finish. Okay. Your point guard is Isaiah Thomas. I have a feeling I know who you have for your shooting guard.
Oh,
I have a feeling.
This is the biggest no-brainer there ever was. Now, how you feel about Isaiah Thomas is the exact same way that I feel for this dude. Feel about this dude, none other than Michael L. Jordan. I can't stand him, but you got to give credit where it's due at. I dislike the brother so much. I've never owned, nor will I ever own a pair of Jordan sneakers, ever. I will never buy a pair of Jordan sneakers. And kind of the way my life is now, we don't play ball.
What's the point now? Now I did when I was in high school, but now
I never owned it. And I buy a running shoe, but most of the time, if I'm gonna put some big time dough on the shoe, it's going to be a dress shoe of some sort most of the
Yeah.
time.
Uh-huh.
So, but anyway, six MVPs, 6 rings, 6 Finals MVPs. Triple six, very interesting. Um, he was 6 Finals MVP. He was Rookie of the Year, one-time Defensive Player of the Year. He led the league in scoring and was the Defensive Player of the Year in the same season. Now, last summer when we had the Jordan What If episode, that we referred to how there's kind of two different Jordans, really three, because you had Jordan with the hair on his head, which was just
That
that's a
was,
bad dude. Then
yeah.
then he was Al Jordan then, but then through the first career before he went away to baseball, that was still Al Jordan. Then he came back to MJ. But I still think the best of the lot, even though he was more polished in later iterations. That dude with the hair on his head, they used to have the in cursive Chicago on the red road unis.
Right.
That's a bad dude, man. So
Yeah.
he had 10 times all D and 10-time all NBA first teams, man. So that goes without it. Now, my small forward, this may be a bit controversial, but I don't care. You know,
Okay.
my small forward, small forward, I really want to emphasize is none other than the doctor, Julius Irvin. Yes, sir. I know people like, okay, where's Bird? Where's LeBron? Whatever, because I feel like this. Okay, the guy he kept the lifeline. If not for the ABA NBA merger, it would not have been a league for Jordan. I mean, for Bird and Magic to save. If not
Right.
for the NBA ABA merger, because he was basically the lifeline that kept them on life support until it really took off in the 80s. But, and in every other sport, especially baseball, you know, if you merge with a league, then obviously you are it's implied that they were your equal if you're going to merge leagues.
Right.
Therefore, with that in mind, I counted all of his ABA stats in addition to that. So with
There
his
you go.
ABA stats, he would have 4 MVPs, 3 rings, one first team all D. And the biggest difference, if you include his ABA stats, even now he would still be ninth all time in scoring. If you include the
Wow.
ABA stuff, he's still ninth. Therefore, the doctor, nobody, no, kind of like the DOC, no one does it better.
Better.
Nobody did it better than which is Dre's best production work, by the way, by far.
Yeah. Yeah.
By far, not even close. But anyway, then fourth, I think this may be one of those players that may show up on both sides, starting power forward, none other than round mound and rebound, Sir Charles Barkley. That's my power forward. He get a lot of flack for not winning a championship, but he was a baller, man. One-time MVP, one-time All-Star MVP, 11-time All-Star, 11-time All NBA, one rebound champ. Also had a gold medal on the inaugural Dream Team. So enough said.
All right.
Then at the man in the middle happens to be his mentor, none other than Moses Malone. That's the man. 3 MVPs, 1 ring, all D. He brought the only guy to bring a guy with they have a losing record or the fewest amount of wins in a season to the finals when he
Yeah.
led the Rockets to the finals in 1981 against the Celtics, in which Cornbread Maxwell won MVP that year. He was
Right.
all D twice. And then kind of a similar deal because he came straight out of high school and he was in the ABA first, kind of similarly to Julius. If you graft in the ABA stats, he's 10th all time in scoring.
Wow.
So those are my five: Zeke, Jordan, Doc, Barkley, and Moses. Those are my starting 5 players.
All
Any
right.
questions? Any dissensions?
No, I mean I have no dissensions at all, to be completely honest. I mean, I really thought, your small forward of Julius Irving, I could see that. I could see that going over Bird. you know. And it's very interesting. A lot of people want to put Bird in as far as like that small forward position, but you went with Julius, which I cannot argue with. I cannot argue with that because, as great as Bird was, Julius had a little something with him. The one part, I was surprised at one pick, and that's your center. I was surprised that you picked Moses Malone. Very
Who,
surprised.
who would you
You
thought I
know,
would have picked?
I thought you would have gone with Ewing.
Moses was better than him.
Okay. I can see
Moses was
that.
better than him.
The only thing about Moses though was that I think when I think of Moses Malone, I think of obviously 83.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought like in the totality of his career, when you think of like the late part of Moses's career, he was bumping around from team to team, and he was still putting up numbers, but it wasn't anything like he was when he was in Houston and Philly. I remember him when he was washed up with the Bullets. I remember him when he was with the Bucks. Didn't he play for the Hawks for a little while too?
He played for the Hawks. Remember the Hawks thought he was the guy to put him over the top, and he came over there and kind of had some to your point, kind of couldn't quite mesh out who was lead dog between he and Dominique Wilkins. He felt that
Right,
he should have been,
right,
whereas obviously by that juncture, the team, Dominique was the man by then. But look at this, even in Atlanta years, right?
right,
Age 33, you know, 20 and 2, 20.2 points, 11.8 boards, 11.8 boards a game, and a block, 1.2 blocks a game. If that's washed up, I'll take it. You know, he averaged 18 and 10 the next season, and then age 35, oh man, he had 10.6 and 8. But he had a lot of longevity, but he did kind of, because to your point, when he won in 83, he was only 27. So you would have thought,
yeah.
okay, that
He's gonna be there for a long time.
yeah. But then I think what really did them in a little bit, because he still played at that um high level, and I've only seen this twice in my career, where, well, three times, matter of fact, where a great player for a short period of time, where there is a couple of years or 1 year in particular, they played at even though they were an all-time great player, they had a small period of time where they played at a god level.
Right.
And him in that time frame that you're talking about, between that Houston appearance in 81 and 83, he was at a god level. And the only other two instances I saw was Elijah Warren with Houston in 94 and 95. Now, he was always great throughout his career, but those two particular years, he was playing at a level. It was like a god level that no
Right.
center that ever lived could have dealt with that iteration of him. And then last but not least, 2011 Dirk Nowitzki, which in my opinion, he had the greatest individual finals run of all time, because
Right.
I think he sacrificed the remainder of his prime just to win that one championship, because he
Right.
beat everybody that there was to beat. He beat them. From the
Yeah.
Heatles to Durant, Harden, and Westbrook,
You
to
know.
the two-time defending champion Lakers. He whooped them all. You know what I
Right.
mean? But
That's
anyway,
right.
that's why I have Moses. I just think he was a better player than Ewing was.
Okay, so to round out your starting five for the Eastern Conference is Isaiah Thomas of the Pistons, Michael Jordan of the Chicago Bulls, Julius Erving of the Philadelphia 76ers, Charles Barkley of the Philadelphia 76ers, and Moses Malone of the Philadelphia 76ers. So you got three Sixers on your Eastern Conference, a Bull and a Piston. That kind of sounds like mine in a way.
Okay.
From the other direction, I don't really care to say, but yeah. Um,
Let me say this right quick, if I may.
Go ahead.
Now, for those thinking I'm overlooking Shaq, similarly to what we did in football and baseball,
Yeah,
although Shaq had a very good, great, what was it, 3, maybe 4 seasons
in
in
Orlando,
Orlando. When you
right?
think Shaq, you think Lakers. So
Yeah,
for that reason, he wasn't even for Eastern Conference consideration for that reason. Just that
Okay.
caveat. I apologize.
Okay. No problem. No problem. And I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. From the Western Conference, my starting five is as follows. My starting point guard, obviously, from Lansing, Michigan, Irvin Magic Johnson, 5-time NBA champion, 3-time NBA final, 3-time NBA final MVP, 12-time NBA All-Star, 2-time NBA All-Star MVP, 9-time All NBA first team. 19.5 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 10 assists per game for his career as a point guard. Of course, 6'9" point guard. He was the guy, even though I wasn't really a Laker fan, I was a fan of him because of he made me a basketball fan. Okay, even though growing up I was a Celtic fan as a kid growing up because my favorite player was Dennis Johnson growing up. And when in a very, very more impressionable age, I was in the early 80s.
Mhm.
But Magic, there was just something about watching Laker games on television in the early 80s on the tape delay, sneaking out of my bed to go watch the game with my grandpa at 10 o'clock at night. There was something romantic about that.
Mhm.
Okay. And Magic was that for me. Okay, he was a 6'9" point guard, which still to this day is kind of unheard of. Okay, and you had Magic, you had the Showtime, which was so, and his passing ability was, oh my gosh, you never saw anybody like that. Maybe since maybe Pete Maravich, but you have his overall charisma, you have his overall style, and it just suited person and place perfectly. Perfect. It was perfect timing for somebody like a Magic to come to the NBA and be in Los Angeles, you know, and what he did in college, leading Michigan State to a national championship, and everything that he done in the NBA was just something that no one had ever seen before. And to your point earlier, he helped save the NBA. Julius took it basically pulled it out of the grave, so to speak.
Mhm.
But Bird and Magic gave it CPR,
Correct.
and Michael Jordan was the one to bring it to the hospital.
Correct.
So that's basically how the NBA was. Okay, my shooting guard. This may be a shock to you personally. And I hate to do this because I wasn't a big fan of his either. But I have to give grace and I have to give credit and greatness where it's all due. My shooting guard is none other than Kobe Bean Bryant. 5-time NBA champion, 2-time NBA Finals MVP, 2008 NBA MVP, 18-time NBA All-Star, 4-time NBA All-Star Game MVP, 11-time first team All-NBA, 9-time defensive first team All-NBA, 2-time scoring champion, and the 1997 dunk contest champion. Kobe was, I wasn't a big fan of his, but again, got to give credit where credit is due.
Why?
He had this killer instinct about him, which I loved. You know, I was just, I loved the way that he would be basically command the ball and would just go off and basically will a team to win. However, there were times where he became what we call it back at the playground a sniper. Okay. But his killer instinct and the way that he went off with that he carried himself with the Lakers, leading them to victories and stuff like that. And he was like as entertaining as Magic, in my opinion. And I know you disagree because I know that look on your face. I know that look. I've been knowing that look for years. Chuck has this very smug look on his face, like, "What are you talking about?" But here's the point that I want to make about Kobe. Okay, if you lined up all of the shooting guards and including the guy that's my starting small forward, if you line them up in the Western Conference, just on pure talent, LeBron is maybe the most physically gifted player this league has ever seen. Magic is probably the most creative player we've ever seen. Michael Jordan is by far the greatest player we've ever had. Kobe, in my opinion, is maybe the greatest pure basketball talent we've ever seen. As far as just a basketball talent, in my opinion. He could shoot, he could defend, he could pass. Sometimes he got a little bit ahead of himself, granted, but just on pure basketball talent, I've never seen anybody like that. That's why he's my shooting guard.
Okay, I don't see what was controversial about that whatsoever. Because I mean, he's only, without question, in my opinion, the second greatest shooting guard of all time. I mean, and it's not even without question. He's the
Mhm.
second greatest shooting guard of all time. Quick question, if I may, though, or you want me to let you run through your stuff
Go
first?
ahead, ask your question.
Okay, like you mentioned, like in terms of Magic and Magic's impact, it's kind of like it's kind of weird. Okay, like Dr. J, for example, you know, pulled it out of the grave, in your words, right? 70s. But you look at how Doc played, and especially his image, he was the quintessential 70s superstar. He was. He fit the 70s perfectly.
Hmm.
Whereas in the exact same way, Magic was the quintessential 80s superstar, where he was,
Yeah.
like the 80s was the decade where
It was the
everything
me
in pop
decade.
culture,
It was the me
everything in
decade.
pop culture took a huge leap. And we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
It took a huge leap where it's over the top, unbelievable stuff, starting with ET, then Rocky
Yeah.
3, then Rocky 4, then the Terminator, then just on and on and on. But I want to ask you this. You said, for example, you used to sneak and watch them games late at night with your grandpa and all that when you were supposed to be at bed. Um, a lot of people forget about this. Now, by the way, I used to do it too, and
Yeah.
that's part of his pull, that on a Tuesday night, 9 or 10 Central Time, when on a school night when we should be sleeping, he's captivating the screen, and it's a
Yeah.
very underrated aspect of especially the early '80s. The coverage eventually went away from them.
Yeah.
I know you remember in the early '80s, during the week games late at night used to come on USA Network.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
But see,
Yeah.
everybody forgets that. Like by the
Yeah.
time it got kind of to like the mid to late '80s, Turner Sports had
Yeah.
took over, and then that's where Bob Neal and Rick Barry used to
Yeah.
broadcast all
Yeah.
of the
That's right.
games and all of that. But at first, it used to be on USA Network, and I still remember getting up. I still remember getting up and all of that and watching it. And then sometimes, this is telling you how old I am. Sometimes you'll see at night USA Cartoon Express reruns before the game. Or
Yeah.
I don't know if you
Yep.
remember this. I don't know if you remember Commander USA Groovy Movies. You know, I had the
Oh
photograph.
my
Yeah,
gosh.
I sent in a self-addressed postal card just so he can send me a picture of him and Lefty, and my brother Rodney tore it just to spite me. So of course, I had to put them things on him. But you know, yeah. But
Yeah.
I remember all that, and I'm just saying he's the like they helped grow the game because he was must see TV, and he was so much must see TV, even though we were supposed to be in
In
bed.
bed.
Similarly to you, I get up and watch the game. My dad was a Laker fan and a Magic fan and a Kareem fan. He would
Mhm.
let me stay up and watch them, even though I was supposed to be in bed.
Right. I mean, I could sneak out of my bed, go right because my grandpa had the game on, because my grandpa wasn't really a Laker fan, but he was a sports fan, and it doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
if the game was on somewhere, he was gonna find it and watch it
Mm-hmm.
until he fell asleep,
Mm-hmm.
So that's what. So my starting backcourt, Magic Johnson and Kobe Bryant, two Lakers. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
my small forward. He did play most of his career at shooting guard, but
Okay. I know who you're picking.
I wanted to go. I could not find anywhere else to put him. Okay, but my small forward, but he did play some small forward during his career. And of course, I'm talking about my all-time favorite player, Clyde Drexler.
Absolutely. No argument for me there. None.
1995 NBA champion, 10-time All-Star, 1992 first team All-NBA. Averaged 20 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. Clyde Drexler, I was a fan of his ever since he was at the University of Houston. And according to my dad, and I really want to look this up, according to my father, somehow we are related to them. I don't know how, but my dad knows Clyde Drexler's father.
Wow.
And
That's interesting.
he knows my dad knows Clyde Drexler's father. And because my dad is a consultant at a building and code for one of the casinos back in Louisiana. And Clyde Drexler's dad would come to the casino all the time. And my dad has started a relationship. Clyde was actually born in New Orleans.
I didn't know that. I knew he went to Houston. I didn't know he was a
He was bo-
did he now he was born here.
he was
Did
born in New Orleans,
he
but he
spend
moved
some
to
time here?
he moved to New Orleans. He
Okay.
moved to Houston when he was a child, when he was like
Okay.
5, 6 years old.
Okay.
Okay, went to high school in Houston and all of that, and went to University of Houston. He was being recruited by University of New Mexico and Texas Tech, but he decided on Houston because he wants to stay home. Okay, but Clyde Drexler, what he did in Portland, one of my all-time favorite players. You know, forget about the dunking, forget about his athleticism, which he worked at relentlessly. Okay, if there was such of a thing as a gym rat, Clyde Drexler was a gym rat, despite the fact of how athletic and how athletically gifted and how gifted he was as a basketball player. Clyde Drexler was a gym rat. He always was trying to improve his craft, which I really respect. And plus, throughout his whole NBA career, you never heard about him getting into any kind of trouble. Never,
Correct.
he always carried himself with such class, and which is one of the things that I was always attracted to, with the fact that he was so well spoken and so cool and so intelligent, and all of this, and there was just something about him that I was just like, that's a really cool person, that's a really cool guy, a really cool person I can idolize, and plus I wore his shoes all through high school. I had like a pair of those Clyde Drexler Avias that he had.
Mm-hmm.
Those were some really nice looking shoes. I'm not even gonna lie, the red and black ones. You know the
Yes,
ones,
sir.
you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir. Yes,
All right.
sir.
My starting power forward, none other than the man from the Virgin Islands, Tim Duncan.
Okay. Okay.
Five-time NBA champion, three-time NBA Finals MVP, two-time NBA MVP in 2002 and 2003, 15-time All-Star, 10-time All-NBA first team, eight-time All-NBA defensive first team, 1998 NBA Rookie of the Year, averaged 19 points per game with 11 rebounds and 2 blocks per game. Tim Duncan, now let me ask you this, Chuck. What was the biggest label you put on the Spurs prior to Tim Duncan's arrival? What did a lot of people say that the Spurs were?
Chokers.
They were soft.
That too.
They were soft.
That too.
There was like a coach of mine used to say, they was as soft as baby crap.
They were.
And when Tim Duncan got there and teamed up with Greg Popovich, it added a little bit of a toughness to them, but at the same time, he was basically, you know how they say that a team takes on the personality of his coach and his best player.
Mm-hmm.
The Spurs was quintessential Tim Duncan. Very understated. I've always called the Spurs the invisible dynasty because they won all these games. In any other sport with the type of success that they had, they could easily be considered a dynasty. But you never hear anybody call them that. But they were, and they never called themselves that. And a lot of that has to do with Tim Duncan and the way that he carried himself. He's such of a quiet, understated guy. I remember this story hearing about him when he was at Wake Forest. And Dave Oldham, the coach at Wake Forest, talked to him right before while recruiting him. And he was like, "What's up with this guy? He seemed like he's so disinterested and not even listening to me." And his assistant said, "Coach, he is listening. That's just the way he is, you
Mm-hmm.
know." And that translated on the court. He didn't, he was so understated that remember he got once tossed for a game for laughing because that was so
Correct.
out of character for him. You know, if anything, I'm a big Star Trek fan. He was like basketball's Mr. Spock, and he was just that way. Showed no emotion except when they finally won a champion. When they would win championships over and over and over again, he would show a little bit of genuine emotion, but not much.
Yeah, and it was just, and they were kind of like, despite how great they were, aesthetically they were not very entertaining despite
No,
their
they weren't.
success. But then you
They
also
just
have
got
to
the job done. That's all they just
and
got the job
sometimes
done.
that's the most important factor. But then you also have to take into account, right, that okay, pretty much the Spurs dynasty as well as the Laker dynasty pretty much were going on concurrently, pretty much
Yeah.
for the most part. Imagine how many championships either of those dynasties would have won if they didn't have to contend with the other.
Was the other one, right? That's hard to
Because they got five apiece. Just
right.
imagine, you would have to imagine, because, pretty much definitely like the early 2000s, the Western Conference final was the de facto NBA finals.
Yes.
Because the Eastern, until Detroit came along in 2004, the Eastern Conference champions, like those years when the Nets and the Pacers were going, the
You're
Eastern
right.
Conference champion, it was, the Western Conference final,
Right.
Lakers Spurs, Lakers Kings.
Right.
Those were the de facto NBA finals,
Finals, right.
So,
Exactly.
so just imagine, you figure definitely even on the conservative side, they would have seven apiece, easy,
Yeah. Easy.
you know?
Easy.
hmm
And to round out my starting five for the Western Conference starters, it would be and if I would have gotten any, I really do believe that if I would have picked anybody else to be my starting center, Charles would probably walk off. But I had to. But to avoid him walking off and me doing the show by myself, my starting center, of course, is Akeem Olajuwon. Two-time NBA champion, two-time Finals MVP, 1994 NBA MVP, 12-time NBA All-Star, six-time All-NBA First Team, two-time NBA Defensive Player of the Year, two-time rebounding leader, two-time NBA blocks leader. He has the most blocks in NBA history and most blocks per game in NBA history with 3.1 blocks per game, adding to that 21.8 points a game and 11 rebounds a game. Akeem Olajuwon was the centerpiece of one of the one of the most complete NBA championship teams I've ever seen. There was just and everything fed through Akeem. And everybody, even though you had Akeem Olajuwon and then later Clyde Drexler for that second championship, you had guys on the team outside of those two that probably would never be in the NBA Hall of Fame. Okay. But they worked so well together and their chemistry was so incredible together that I mean, it could be argued to this day whether the New York Knicks could have or should have beaten the Rockets in Game 7 in '94 had it not been for John Starks shooting you out of the finals, shooting you out of Game 7. But that team was just so complete, and the centerpiece of that team was Akeem Olajuwon. Not to mention all of the things that he did prior to those championships with some really bad Rockets teams in the early '90s and late '80s. They went into the finals in '86 with Ralph Sampson, and we talked about that team in '86 in a previous episode that we did doing about the Jordan what ifs. But with Akeem Olajuwon was the centerpiece of that franchise. And when you think Houston Rockets, even to this day, the first name you think of is Akeem Olajuwon. Okay, and not having him as my starting center would be, in my opinion, absolutely ludicrous.
And I totally agree. He was just a tremendous player. Just he was just a catastrophic player.
Yeah,
Just because he could do everything well. He could other than he has other than he has the top two post repertoire of all time.
right.
You can go 1A, 1B with he and Kevin McHale because they were
Yeah,
just as far as just pure post prowess, they
right.
are the very in variety and different ways they could do things. Those are the two best, and he just was a great player. And then you got to consider his greatness. The man went back to back with Kenny Smith at point guard.
Yeah,
He went back,
yeah,
and I'm not calling Kenny Smith a scrub, but it wasn't an ideal situation. But to your point, in terms of how complete they were, despite the talent level of some of the pieces around him, they all fit perfectly together. Like, for example,
yeah,
we talk about Kenny Smith, right? He was a solid player. He wasn't much of a playmaking point guard. He was more of a spot up shooting point guard and an
yeah,
emotional leader and all of that. But he fit perfectly with especially the first year with Elijah One because the playmaking mostly went through Elijah One, as you alluded to.
right.
And he, Vernon Maxwell, Barrio Ellie,
Or the
Robert
Stark.
Horry, Otis Thorpe, they could knock down shots and all
Yeah,
that. So they perfectly complemented one another with a grossly underrated coach. It's a shame that Rudy Tomjanovich is known mostly for the confrontation with Kermit Washington as
right.
opposed to his coaching
His
career.
coaching career, right?
And just a great coach. And then he's another one of those what ifs because as we touched upon last year, like the Jordan what ifs. You're thinking, okay, we don't really need to rehash the whole thing, but a lot of those things that happened, you know, he didn't get the championship in '94 when it looked like he was set to probably start winning championships several years earlier.
Yeah,
And just a great player, and I can't argue with any of your top five. The only other caveat I'll add is with Clyde Drexler, an underrated component of his game. With my eyes, he's one of the top three jelly men I've ever seen in my life.
yes,
And he has the best jelly I've ever seen in my
yeah.
life. That jelly he put on
On the
the Rockets
Rockets,
in the '94 playoffs, that's the best jelly I've ever seen. You
right?
know, and he, Julius Irving, and of course the Iceman, they the top three jelly. Then you got to throw Connie Hawkins in there. Then
Yeah.
whoever you want for a fifth, have
Well,
at it. Wilt used to jelly that thing backwards from 15. No, yeah, Will was a good jelly man.
that's it.
Yeah, man.
So my starting five is Magic Johnson at point, Kobe Bryant at two, Clyde Drexler at small forward, Tim Duncan at power forward, and Akeem Olajuwon at center.
Can't
That's
go
a
wrong with that, man.
Your lineup is pretty good, man. I mean, to be honest, compared to
Can't
what
go
we
wrong.
have, we got some really good
You
lineups
got
here.
can't
So
go wrong with that,
moving
man.
on to your second starting five or your backup five.
Okay,
Okay.
backup five.
And
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I am very, very anxious to see what you have for your second five,
Okay,
or your backups. I'm very curious to see. I think I know a couple of people where you might go with, but I'm gonna let you explain.
okay. Well, I had to go a little unconventional, a little bit.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Which adds to the intrigue.
because when you think about Eastern Conference point guards in our lifetime, after Isaiah Thomas, what else?
That's
Now
a
now
big
you
drop off. That's another
you've
bit of
had
a
some
drop
point
off.
guards where guys were really great for a very short period of time. Like
Hmm.
for example, Mark Price for like about a 3 to 4 year period.
Right.
Mark Price was just like killer. And man, imagine if that dude played now. But
Oh my God. Yeah.
if he played now, if he played now, it would be insane the way like with the pick and rolls and the way he was the first guy I saw consistently splitting the pick and roll. But anyway,
Yeah.
um anyway, so you don't have a lot of point guards or whatever. So I had to be a little unconventional. So at my starting point guard of my second unit, I have none other than a guy who's grown on me through the years, and I despised of him in our college days because I always thought he was a gravy train and a coattailer. And I still think that to a degree, but he's
Okay.
grown on me through the years. And my point guard is Scottie Pippen. That's my point guard.
Really? Okay.
Yes, that's Scottie Pippen. Because I don't have nobody to handle the ball. And then he can handle the ball. He can facilitate the offense. He can guard with this game. In today's game, he would be able to guard 1 through 5.
Yeah.
In this game, the era we're talking about, 1 through 3. That he's not guarding a 4 or 5. Because imagine, to
Right.
your point, you got Tim Duncan, he has no shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So but he can, he's a big enough body, which was a big time catalyst for why the Bulls won their first championship in '91 against
Right.
Magic and the Lakers, because he was able to really make Magic work
Work.
to get
Yeah.
into those get into his sets and all of that. So he really made Magic work. So, in terms of Scottie Pippen, 6 rings, 7 times All NBA, 10 times All D, 1 time Steel Champ, and 1 time All-Star Game MVP, as well as another member of the inaugural Dream Team. Now, I feel Dominique Wilkins should have been on the team ahead of him, but
Right.
that's another topic for another day. But a great, great player. So I have Scottie Pippen.
Okay.
Um, Second guy, I think, fairly, you may not agree with this, but this is my team, so I'm gonna put the team the way I want.
Okay.
Dwayne Wade is my second, is my second unit shooting guard. I know you may be thinking Reggie Miller. I just think in comparison, it's not relatively close between the two of them. I just don't think I
And
don't
I
think it's
agree,
close.
and
You
I
know,
agree with that sentiment. Going with Dwayne Wade again, not one of my favorite players, but he was a damn good player for his career with Miami. Um, can't argue with it. I can't argue with that pick.
correct. He has 3 rings, one including one pre-LeBron, pre-Heatles.
Yes,
He
right.
he, you know he got he
And
got
that
one
and
of the
that's what
rings.
got me over the top was the fact that if he would have won the championship without LeBron and without Chris Bosh, if he won the championship, I mean with them, then I would feel a little bit differently. But when he won that championship, and he pretty much essentially did it literally by himself, pretty much,
Correct.
you know, and I was like really impressed with that. I really was, with
Mm-hmm.
him doing that. So just like you with Scottie Pippen, over the years, Dwayne Wade has kind of grown on me over time.
And also, he's also a guy. What I've always had respect for him about is when he came into the league, you figured he would be good, but
Yeah,
he's actually kind of on the undersized. He undersized for a two guard a little bit. He's kind of
right.
like that little tweener, six
Yeah,
four, 6'3" ish up in there. But
right.
he wound up, to everyone's surprise, due to the dog he has, being a transcendent player. So
Mm-hmm.
3 rings, 13 times All-Star, All-Star Game MVP, one Finals MVP, and one of the best Finals series ever. Like for
Yeah.
one series, he's up there in terms of his production for one series. 8 times All NBA, 3 times All Defense, and 1 time scoring title, and all of that. Now, question for you,
Right.
if we got time to
Go
expound on
ahead.
this, because I don't want to draw this out too much. Conventional wisdom is, when we're talking all-time great two guards, conventional wisdom, the first two are no-brainers in Mike and Kobe respectively.
Mm-hmm.
But then, generally speaking, that third spot usually goes to Dwayne Wade, no questions asked. And I've always had an issue, even though I love Wade, I have an issue with that because I watched them both play, and as good as he was, I just don't think he's better than Clyde. I just don't.
Okay. Like Dwayne Wade better than Clyde Drexler?
Yeah,
I don't think so either. And I'm not just saying that because Clyde Drexler's my all-time favorite player. I'm saying that because with Clyde with Dwayne Wade, I think him teaming up with LeBron and Chris Bosh kind of he didn't realize his total potential if he wasn't with LeBron. He had to tone down his game. In other words, basically, in my opinion, I've always said that Dwayne Wade is basically our generation's version of Earl the Pearl Monroe. He had
Okay.
to tone down his game when he went to the Knicks. Had he stayed in Baltimore, had he stayed with the Bullets, he would have had scoring titles out the wazoo for all the way through 1980, I
Hmm.
think. But when Earl went to New York, he had to tone down his game. And I think when LeBron came to Miami, he had to tone down his game. Now, in my opinion, Dwayne Wade, just off the top of my head, is maybe the the sixth greatest shooting guard of all time. Number six, all time.
So I'm
Okay.
sure you got Jerry. So Cole, Mike, Clyde, Jerry West. Those are four for sure.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Who is the other dude?
Iverson.
No, man. Come on, man.
I
No,
got Iverson
no,
as I
no,
got Iverson fifth.
no.
Iverson fifth, maybe Iverson slash Dave Bing.
No. I give you Dave Bing by Iverson, man. No, man, ain't man. Not. And I'm talking strictly basketball, not
Yeah, yeah.
his cultural impact that he had.
No,
I'm
no, no.
talking
I'm just
about
talking about the
strictly
straight.
hooping.
I'm just strictly hoops, strictly hooping.
Yeah,
Okay, I got
yeah.
Iverson right ahead of Dwayne Wade, just
Okay,
ahead of Dwayne Wade.
okay.
You
All
know,
right.
Iverson, Dave Bing, then Dwayne Wade.
Okay,
He's like Dave Bing and Iverson 5 and 5A all time.
okay. Now, for my small forward, no brainer to me.
Mm-hmm.
One Larry Legend is my small forward. You know, especially Goldilocks, man.
Yeah,
When he had the
especially when he had the
Goldilocks,
mullet. When he had the mullet.
when he had the mullet, but now once he went to the crew, the kind of the taper and all of that, he was kind of, he had the broke back and all that. But when he
Yeah.
had the mullet, man, get the hell out of here, man. He was like, when he had the mullet, man,
When he
he
had the
man,
mullet and the mustache.
yeah, when he had the mullet, man, when that mullet covered that bird on the back of
Yeah.
that jersey, you couldn't see that name back there, man. Get out of here, man. Wasn't hardly nobody other than Doc messing with that dude, man. But
Right.
3-time MVP, 3 rings, Rookie of the Year, 1-time All-Star Game MVP, 2-time Finals MVP, 5 NBA Finals appearances,
Yep.
12-time All-Star, 10 times All-NBA, 3-time All-D, and also, resurrected once, because during the 70s and the Dave Cowens era after that, they kind of was like in purgatory a little bit and
Right.
all of that. And he brought them back. He brought them back and restored them to their former and past glory and added to it. And he just a great player, all-time great trash talker,
Yep.
just 3-time three-point champion, just everything you want in a basketball player. Perhaps played too hard to his own detriment and from a
Right.
longevity perspective.
Right.
But just a great player. Hated him as a kid. Hated him as a kid.
He was one of, I mean, I
You
loved
know,
Larry Bird, all time great. He's like, well, all time great players. He's like within my top five
you
greatest
know,
players I've ever saw. You know, he's not overtaking Clyde as not my number one, but he's up there with Clyde.
you
Okay.
know,
But man, Larry Legend, number 33 for the Boston Celtics, the Blazers weren't going to the finals until the late 80s. But
mhm,
in that time period, after I saw Clyde as members of Phi Slamma Jamma, Bird was right up there winning those championships, especially when he stole the ball from Isaiah Thomas in '87 that you brought up earlier. That
mhm.
was like my apex of my fandom for him.
Yeah. And then, another guy where people sit here and talk like, you know, he wouldn't be successful today. I'm like, man,
Are
come
you
on, man.
crazy?
Man, come on, man. Especially, I mean,
Especially now.
he was a 3-point shooter, and when they played basketball, 'cause back then, regardless of prowess, unless you were behind in the game, the 3-point shot was a bad shot.
Right.
For the most part, even despite the fact that he had a high proficiency at it. You
Yeah.
know, it was a bad shot. So imagine how he would fit in, because you look at like the success of Luka, the success. Jokic is basically an oversized version of him in a
Yeah.
lot of ways,
Right.
And he would kill. And then with the trash talking, man, these dudes want to cry or go to the bus and get their gun when he's done with them,
Right.
and all of that. And then another thing, and I know, coming up in the 80s, come on, let's talk about it, man. Let's be real. We here on Historically Speaking Sports, folks, we keep it real. We tell the
Right.
truth on here. You remember, you know, growing up in the growing up in the hood, growing up in the African American family and all of that. It used to be this sentiment that, he's not that good. He's not this,
Right.
then eventually like, man, crap, man. Dude is a baller, man.
Yeah.
The dude is a baller, bro. I mean, you can say what you want, man. That dude can hoop, man. But anyway,
Right.
Larry Legend is my third, and he could really start.
Right.
I love Doc, because I was gonna start Bird, but I love Doc. But
Right.
they're interchangeable. If you start Bird,
You're right. You can't go wrong with either
you
one
can't
at
go
the
wrong.
three.
You start Bird, man. Especially
You
if
can't
you're
go
trying to
wrong
win a
at
game.
either one, either way at the three. You can't.
And who what was it? I'm trying to think. It was Red Auerbach, perhaps, that said, if you needed to win a game, I picked Jordan, but if I needed a shot to save my life, it's gonna be Bird.
Yeah.
So so enough said. Okay, at the power forward, brought the torture chamber himself at the power forward, man. Kevin McHale.
All right.
He's at the power forward. 3 rings, 7 times All-Star, 6-time All-D, 1-time All-NBA, 2-time sixth man. I mean, and then I touched upon him earlier as far as just variety in the post and moves and just footwork and creativity in the post. I think from that perspective, he and Elijah Warren were both in a league of their own as far as that is concerned. You've never seen that type of creativity and footwork and things like that from you got to play like Kareem. Obviously, why be creative when you basically had the atomic bomb of shots?
Right.
You didn't need to be creative. But I'm talking about, but just I mean, he had drop steps, up and unders. He could hooks with either hand, the fall away, always. And then what I liked about him always, he was so fundamentally sound. Did you ever see him stripped down low by a guard? Ever?
No, never.
Right? You throw the ball to him, or if he get the offensive rebound, he always kept the ball up. He didn't bring it down, the power dribble, then get stripped. He never. Right. He was always just, if you want to learn post play, and just put in the tapes of that dude, and you will get what you need to get. And then furthermore, these are a lot of accolades, right? Just imagine how great they would be if he had his own squad. He was sharing, because you remember for the first few years of his career,
he came off the bench.
He was off the bench. Yeah. And that speaks to his attitude towards winning. He wasn't, he was just worried about the ultimate goal. Then even when he started, he's sharing the wealth with Bird, Parrish, Cornbread Maxwell, Dennis Johnson, Danny Ainge, guys like that. He's sharing the wealth, because I think for his career, he averaged like 17 a game, but he had a 25 points per game, and he's another guy where he played in that 4 hole because he had to back then. Imagine now if he could play in the 5, or if he played in the 4 hole, essentially being guarded by small forwards all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, just insane, just an insane player. One of my favorite players, man, Kevin McHale. And it's just like, I hated the Celtics as a kid, but it just seems like as I matured and learned about basketball, man, you just develop you always had a respect for him, but then an appreciation and then a fandom for him, because it was just beautiful to watch them play. It's beautiful to watch them play. But anyway, on to my 5-man. My 5-man is actually Patrick Ewing. Now, I pondered on this really hard, but I'll touch on that later. Patrick Ewing, 1 Rookie of the Year, three 3-time All-D, 11-time All-Star, 7 All-NBAs, gave Michael Jordan several runs, deep runs, hard
Right.
runs, just didn't have the tools around him and the coaching. And I always wonder, it's two things I always wonder, perhaps a big what if. What happens if, I think, because they were poised to do it, had Rick Pitino not left and gone to Kentucky. What, because, at that time, they had Rod Strickland. They were playing a style where kind of like ahead of its time a little bit, where obviously everything went through Patrick first, but they were one of the first teams in that rendition to kind of have a slightly increased reliance on the 3-point shot.
Right.
And also, and I think they had like a lot of good players. You remember he always was a point guard short against the Bulls, but in 1989 he had both Mark Jackson and Rod Strickland. He had them both.
Yeah.
Then, he had Gerald Wilkins Starks. He had Johnny Newman. They're not
household names.
But
okay. But there were solid players.
They were solid.
There were
players,
solid
man.
players, right?
Then you had, had guys like then at the power forward you had Oakley and Sidney Green.
Right.
And they just had a nice little solid nucleus. And I thought when they lost to the Bulls in 6 in 89, they were going to take off. But then Rick Pitino left and went to Kentucky, and Stu Jackson took over. And then it was just this, everything go through Patrick no matter what.
I mean, when Stu Jackson arrived in New York with the Knicks in 90, that team took like 3 steps back, and Riley had to bring them back.
Correct.
Because that was a major, major mistake by hiring Stu Jackson. Major mistake. They took like I said, they took like 3 steps back because, like you said, everything had to go through Patrick and forget about everything else.
And as much as I love Patrick, he wasn't quite as fluid in terms of his ability to see the floor, like Elijah Warren, Kareem, and especially Shaq could.
Right.
Like in terms of hitting open players, things like either it was an inability or an unwillingness or whatever. But even then, once the personnel he had, even if he passed it to them, what difference it made? They couldn't shoot. So I just felt that and then his best chance was 93, and I don't you say a word. I don't need you bringing that back up.
I'm not gonna bring up his name. I'm not gonna say his name. I was about to mention his name. I was like, you know what? I better not. Because you went on, because when that happened, you went like on a 30-minute rant. That would have been like podcast gold back in 93 on how he messed that up.
It's like, come on, man. And in all honesty, I'm going to be totally honest with you, right? And I may have said this before. In all honesty, they fouled him.
Yeah.
But I agree with the ref. You're a scrub. I'm not calling it. You know what I mean?
No, I mean,
6'10".
You're 6'10". Why you can't flush it?
Exactly.
Why you can't flush it?
He was fouled, but I wouldn't have called that either. Because he looked like he was playing, looking for the bailout. And then let's just say hypothetically, the referee would have called the foul, right?
Right.
Are you confident he'd have made both foul shots?
No.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So
I answer that now, some 30-some years later.
You know what I mean? Because you talk about, I got fouled. Okay, it's not like you were going to make both foul shots. Come on.
Right.
Come on, man. But anyway,
because he was like a 65% free throw shooter for a career?
Something like that. But even then, he's not a clutch. He was never a clutch player. He was never a clutch. And then we just had some horrible moves. You remember we traded Rod Strickland for, and I mentioned it before, Maurice Cheeks was like 36 with the Spurs, and we traded Rod Strickland for him straight up. Then the next year they traded after we scared them in 92, they traded Mark Jackson to the Clippers for Tony Campbell, and I'm sure there's other players other things the Knicks threw in, but it was Tony Campbell. Tony Campbell used to play for the Lakers. It was Tony Campbell, Charles Smith, and I mean, not Doc Rivers. He was never that. He was Glenn Rivers.
By that time, yeah.
He was done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then just wonder why we couldn't win anything. But anyway, my second five is to recap: Pippen, Wade, Bird, McHale, and Ewing.
All right. So that's a very, very solid second five there that you
Mm-hmm.
have. My second five goes like this. And my point guard for my second five is essentially for you, probably no major surprise.
No, absolutely not. I already know who it is.
You already know who it is. None other than the graduate, the legend from Gonzaga University, Mr. John
Exactly.
Stockton, NBA all-time leader in steals and assists. All-time 10-time NBA All-Star, 1993 All-Star Game co-MVP, I should say. Two-time All-NBA first team, nine-time NBA assist leader, two-time NBA steals leader, member of the NBA's 50th and 75th anniversary teams. Average
Yes, he was.
13.1 points per game, 10.6 10 assists per game, and two steals per game. I'm gonna ask you this question, and in your own personal opinion, you and I have been watching basketball pretty much our whole lives. Do you think John Stockton would have had the same career without Karl Malone?
Very good question.
Or let me put
I,
it this way.
he
Did Karl Malone make John Stockton, or did John Stockton make Karl Malone?
They made each other. Because I think even without Karl Malone, even without each other, they're both still Hall of Fame players,
Yeah,
even without each other. Because you don't, in the middle of the Magic era, what was it? He led the league in assists like 8 years in a row or something like that. You
right,
don't do that if you're not great. You know what I mean?
right.
And then you got to figure, some of these dudes he had, right? You just think he had Hornacek. Dude had Jay Humphreys, man.
Yeah,
He had David Benoit, Shannon Anderson, not the one. What's the boy? Not Willie, not his brother Willie, who was a baller.
right.
Shannon Anderson.
Shannon
He had
Anderson,
he had Dave Benoit.
David
David Benoit.
Benoit, Brian Russell, Thurl Bailey early on,
He was
Mark
over
Eaton,
though.
yeah, Thurl Bailey, Mark Eaton, you know, early on in his career. I mean, he had some guys that was serviceable.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go further along down the bench, you got guys like Greg Ostertag, which was just a body, you know,
Greg Foster,
Greg
Scrub,
Foster, they were at the
Howard
end of
Isley,
Howard,
Scrub.
Jeff Malone
He
at
was
the end,
good. Jeff Malone could
at
play a
the
little
end of
bit.
his career, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
so he had some decent players. He only had like well, I'm not sure if Hornacek's in the Hall of Fame. He should be if he's not, in my opinion. Um, but you had Karl Malone, obviously, which got a bulk of the points, and that team, even though, and I'll never forget this, it was 1988.
They
It was
gave the Lakers everything, man.
they played the Lakers on a Thursday night in the Salt Palace, right? I had never really seen the Jazz before. Okay. They basically ran the Lakers out the gym. And I was like, who are these guys? Who are these people? Then I realized the added caveat was the fact that Karl Malone was from Louisiana, which I didn't know at the time. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, dude, and they basically gave the Lakers fits. And their coach at the time was Frank Layden, one of the great underrated coaches
Yes,
in
he
the
was.
history of the league.
Yes, he was.
He was very underrated. And that Utah Jazz team in the late 80s was just so much fun to watch. And over time, led by Stockton, they maybe slow rise to having an NBA into an NBA power. The two championships that they played for in 97 and 98, they weren't going to beat them in 97,
They should have won in '98.
but they should have won it in 98.
Yes.
They really should have won it in 98, but again, they just
Karl
came up
Malone,
short.
man.
You know how you get stripped by Jordan in Game 6.
He hacked them, of course, but
Yeah,
you know, you can't call that though, man.
no,
And
you
it's
can't.
just, but he was a great player, man. And I just the only thing the only take back I drawback I have for Stockton was he was with a lot of the cast that you mentioned, he made them all better, much better than they were. Because you remember in '88, he had Bobby Hansen as his running mate. Remember?
Yeah, yeah.
Bobby Hansen that wound up second unit of the Bulls. He had Bobby Hansen with him at the time. But one of my takebacks would always be that he wouldn't look for his shot enough in key moments. Because
Right.
sometimes,
Now you got to take into consideration is that when they made it to the finals in '97, it was his shot that beat Houston.
correct. Correct. Barkley don't know how to close the pick and roll, but but I think sometimes some of them other '90s exits, and I understand that's just the way he's wired. He was a pure point guard, but
Yeah.
he was just as he was a guy that if he wanted to average 25, he could do that easily because
Right.
he was that proficient offensively. But I think he should have been, like Isaiah Thomas similarly would work with a lot of times run the team, because he could average 30, but he averaged 17. But there
Right.
were certain times again in certain series at certain times where he's like, okay, if we're gonna get there, I'm going to have to do it. And I think that in a lot of ways, he was Stockton like Isaiah. He was capable of doing that, but a lot of times he didn't choose to.
Right. So next one is my shooting guard, my second team shooting guard. This might be a bit of a surprise. And this is one of the ones that you could put on there and say, okay, this is a favorite of mine. And I wanted to include him on here because of just personal reasons. You may not agree, but this is it. My shooting guard, my second team shooting guard is a man they known as the Blade. None other than Alex English for the Denver
Man, you're
Nuggets.
never gonna get me to argue about Alex English. Come on now. You're never gonna
Eight-time
get me to say a dissenting word about Alex English. Not happening.
eight-time NBA All-Star, 1983 NBA scoring champ, three-time All-NBA second team, 21.5 points per game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists per game for the Denver Nuggets. He was by far the smoothest scorer you could imagine. Now think about this. I mean, you got guys that could drop 30, 35, right? With him, he could drop to 30, 35 points, and you don't realize it. You don't realize. You sit down there and watch a game, and the announcer say, in the '80s, watching the Denver Nuggets game, and the announcer says, "There's English again. He has 35," and you're like, "When did he score 35 points?"
Okay.
That's how smooth he was. And especially with those really cool looking rainbow uniforms that they had, when you thought of the Denver Nuggets, you thought of scoring. And with that Doug Moe offense, and you got
My
guys
favorite
like
coach.
Fat Lever and Dan Issel, they're running the floor. And Alex English was part of that. I want scoring for my second team, and Alex English is going to supply that.
Then they had another two of my favorite players too. They had Calvin Nat.
Calvin Nat,
They had
yep.
Calvin Nat, and then as I mentioned maybe last summer, another member of my all dog team, Bill Hansley. Boy,
Yep.
I love
Bill
me some Bill
Hansley, yep.
Hansley, man. So and they had, for some portion they had Dan Issel as well. But just think about this, looking at the brother stats, right? Age 37, Dallas Mavericks. He averages 9.7 points a game, basically 10. He say, "Oh, I can't do it no more." 10 a game gets you $25 million now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
crazy.
I
He
mean,
was a baller. You're not gonna get me to say a bad word about him. No, you know.
and he was like one of the first guys that I remember was like he's like one of those guys that I was instantaneously drawn to that a lot of my friends weren't drawn to. You
Mhm.
know, and it was like I'll be at school and like, man, did you see the Nuggets last night, bro? That Alex English could score. And they're like, oh man, Alex English he ain't that good. He ain't Magic. He ain't Bird and stuff like that. Maybe I was just looking at it from just like a total basketball perspective, or maybe I just had a higher IQ at the time than they did. But Alex English, even in my most formative years in the mid '80s and watching basketball, he was just so much fun to watch and just so smooth.
Yes, he was. And then you got to also consider, like, I've touched on this multiple times. We talked about this multiple times where the explosion of popularity of the league in the 80s was, of course, he was spearheaded by Magic and Bird.
Right.
But overall, it doesn't work with all of these supporting characters you're mentioning. You've mentioned a few of them. We're talking Clyde Drexler, Alex English, like a random, and and I know. Okay, let's keep it real now.
Right.
People like he not better than Bird. He'll give Bird 35
Yep.
in a heartbeat. I've sat there and watched this brother give Doc a quick 30, easy.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
And quick.
He give Doc a quick 30 easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Doc may be on the bill, Doc may be the attraction, but Alex, he wasn't Alex English was not to play with, man.
My small forward, again, I had to kind of tweak it a little bit, but my small forward is Sean Kemp. 6-time NBA All-Star, 3-time All-NBA second team, averaged 14.6 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, and 2 blocks per game. I put Sean Kemp as small forward just for the athleticism aspect of it. You got Alex English on the second team, and I have Sean Kemp as my small forward second team, but he's one of those guys that I could put in for added athleticism, added speed on the outside. He's not a three-point shooter by any stretch, but still, he's athletic. I like speed. I like scoring, and he's going to supply that on this team, especially the second team.
Well, I can't argue with the Rain Man. Peculiar pick. Question for you.
Uh-huh.
Since you had to go unconventional, and I know, as we did a couple, perhaps the last episode about the Sonics,
Yeah.
Supersonics rather. I hate Sonics. I always call them the Supersonics. But
Uh-huh.
is it due to your affinity for him, or is it
Yes.
due to
A part of it is my affinity
a
for
lack of options? And if there were
and
any other options and
well, I
considerations,
had a couple of
what you
other
had?
considerations as far as like second team small forward
Hmm.
is concerned. I seriously thought about Chris Mullin. Seriously thought about Chris Mullin at second. But the thing with him
No
was
longevity.
it didn't have the longevity that I was looking
Hmm.
for.
Yeah.
He really didn't. That's the only real small forward I really thought about. I'm thinking about some right now. Jerome Kersey doesn't do it for me.
No, no.
Um, others that I'm thinking of. I mean, they don't really meet up for
Yeah.
me, especially in the West doing people say, well, what about Kevin Durant? Kevin Durant would never be a part of this team. Never. I'm sorry. With what he did, if he would have stayed in Oklahoma City and played his career in Oklahoma City and not try to chase rings, especially you're going to join a team, that beat you in the playoffs the very next year. No, that's a punk move.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. No.
And you know the
So,
way we were, man. If you do that, like one team been running the court all day, and then one guy that's been running the court has to go home, and you join. Guess who's not getting the ride to the? We go hoop again, man. Don't even call that dude, man. But
no, no.
but now, if I may, right quick,
Hmm.
and it's a tangent. I think in this instance, Kevin Durant is being unfairly criticized regarding this Houston series. I
Right.
think he is, because they are like, well, he quit on his team, but everybody is leaving out. You remember in 2019, they were down 2-0 to the we was at the in Golden State at the time. They were down 2-0 to the Raptors, and they're like, well, he needs to play. He had been
Yeah, the high
sidelined with a
ankle
calf
sprain.
injury.
Calf injury, right.
He went out there and gave it the old college go, and
Mm.
lasted 6 minutes before he totally ruptured his Achilles.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, especially with him being 37 now and possibly on his last contract, he like, man, if it's any doubt, I'm not going out there. And people are unfairly criticizing him when they forget how the last time he kind of tried to suck it up and
Right.
how it did him in. That's just a quick caveat.
Right. So my power forward, if my second team has John Stockton, it has to be Karl Malone. That's my power forward second team.
Okay.
Two-time NBA MVP, 14-time All-Star, two-time NBA All-Star MVP, 11-time NBA League First Team, three-time NBA All-Defensive First Team, and the 1986 All-Rookie Team. 25 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, and 4 assists. If I have John Stockton, it would be almost a crime not to include Karl Malone. Karl Malone is, like I said, one of my top 10 favorite players of all time that I've actually seen. Even though he does have something of a less than likable personality, I have to put that aside. Because some of the things that he said, especially about Magic when he had the when he had the HIV, I just couldn't forgive. Okay, but at the same time, I cannot, in good faith, say, he's off my team because of that. He's just a damn good basketball player. Whether I agree with him or not, that I'm putting that aside at least for now. Karl Malone was one of my favorite players. And plus it kind of helped. He's from the house. He's from Louisiana, like we are. But at the same time, one of my favorite players. He was in wrestling for a while, so I know that attracted that you kind of like a little bit about that too. So, I have Karl Malone. If I have John Stockton on my second team, I have to have Karl Malone on my second team as well.
I can't argue with any of that. Oh man, it's a lot that I could say, but
okay.
My mom always told me,
if you ain't got anything good to say, don't say anything, right?
And throughout my life, I generally do not adhere
to that. You're right, you don't.
I usually don't adhere to that, but this time I will. I will. This time I will. So okay. But he deserves to be on the court. It has nothing to do with him as a basketball player. It's him as a person. But
right.
If people familiar with his story, you can read between the lines, and let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, I mentioned it. In my description, I did mention it. That why it would really pull people the wrong, which included me, and I lost a little. He lost a lot of cool points for me with some of the things he said about Magic. But still, I have to appoint great. I mean, he's one of the greatest players of all time. He's definitely up there.
Well, let me ask: were these two power forward picks, as in oh, come on. You had Tim Duncan, which is a no-brainer, and
Karl
Malone. Did you consider that a lot? Because the Western Conference has a ton of good power forwards. We're talking, James Worthy could play that power forward position.
I thought about Dirk. I thought about Dirk seriously too.
KG, I don't think KG was nowhere near as good as Dirk. And then to a far lesser degree, Chris Webber. I think he was another step down from there.
Right. So I just went. Okay. I mean, like in my opinion, as power forwards for the Western Conference, even though Dirk was as versatile and as great a player he was, I don't think he rises to the level where Tim Duncan and Karl Malone are. As great as Dirk was, in my opinion, I don't think he rises to that level. He's like a step just below them, in my opinion.
Wait a minute now. Okay. See, you always got to do that, man. You always have to do that. So, okay. We talked about it earlier, but let's run it, man. Okay. 2011, first round. Dude beat Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge. First round.
Okay, I give you that.
Second round. He beat the two-time defending NBA champions, LA Lakers, Kobe, Gasol, Phil Jackson, Andrew Bynum, et cetera, et cetera. And they had made the finals 3 years in a row.
Right.
Conference finals. He beat Durant, Russ, and James Harden.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Then in the finals, nobody except for me thought they had a chance. Because I remember when the series came, a buddy of mine, he like, what you I say, the Mavs gonna beat them in 6, man. I'm telling you. I picked, but they was up against LeBron,
Dwayne
Wade,
Wade, Chris Bosh,
Bosh,
Mario Chalmers.
those guys, right? He didn't
Right.
have a chance on that shit. He had a washed up Jason Kidd. He had Deshaun Stevenson, Sean Marion, JJ Barrera, who really turned that series around for them.
Yeah.
And to me, a very underrated coach in Rick Carlisle. And he beat them, but also won the pivotal game 5. Remember, LeBron and Wade jokingly walking through the tunnel top because the word had got out that Dirk was sick, and they mocked his sickness, and Dirk went out there and schooled him. Now, the only reason why I'm bringing all this up,
Right.
because you said specifically, quote unquote, didn't rise to the level that Carl did.
Fair point. But the reason why he's off of my list was because what was going on in Dirk's career? What was the biggest thing about Dirk Nowitzki prior to 2000 to that championship that he won?
Well,
What was the biggest misnomer about him? Was that he was a good player, damn good player. But every time they go into the playoffs, they would lose to teams they had no business losing to. Golden State in 2006, the New Orleans Hornets in 2007 in the first round. Okay,
mm-hmm.
that's the reason why I put him one rung below them.
Okay.
Okay, Tim Duncan, yes, because of all of the things, all of the accolades that he won. Karl Malone for the longevity in the scoring. He goes on that list. Dirk Nowitzki is right underneath them.
Okay. Point taken. My only problem with that is Carl not only played with another top 50
Hall
player,
of Fame
he
player.
played
Yeah.
with another top 75 player. He played with arguably, now in my opinion, is not arguably to me, because I think Isaiah Thomas was clearly better than Stockton, in my opinion.
Okay.
But some people believe that Stockton is the second greatest point guard of all time. And
I'm in that list.
huh?
And I am in that list. You know that. You know that I prefer John Stockton over Isaiah Thomas. But go ahead.
You trying me today. You are trying me today, man. But I feel you. I've always respected your opinion. We've always had knockout, drag out discussions over this for 30 years. So fine, I'll just accept that. But my point is, if you gave Dirk, I'm just saying how you can't win the championship. If both of them was, I'm not saying they're overrated. I'm just saying hypothetically, if both of them were so great and so good, how you can't win the championship, man?
Well, to be honest,
it wasn't like the West where after the Lakers run in the 80s, you get to the early 90s, it wasn't a predominant team after that. The Blazers made it a couple of times. Then
Right.
the Rockets made it a couple of times. Then the Sonics were in there. It wasn't a predominant team, so there's plenty of opportunity for them to make a finals appearance prior to 1997 when they were 13 years in apiece and on the back end of their primes.
Right. And that pretty much answers it right there. They're the back end of their prime when they finally got to the finals playing against a prime Michael Jordan. Now it doesn't really make a difference. I know what you're saying is that it doesn't make it. One guy really doesn't make a difference, but you're talking about the guy that's considered the greatest basketball player on planet Earth, that he has to go up against, along with Scottie Pippen, which is one of the top greatest players of all time. Also a member of the top 50, top 75 players of all time. Also. So it was kind of a wash there. The reason why I think the Jazz didn't win those championships in 97 and 98 was not because of those two, but it was because of the supporting cast. Where was Brian Russell?
where he was.
Exactly.
Brian Russell. He was Brian Russell.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
What you want me to say, man?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Howard Isley. You know what I'm saying? Greg Ostertag? Come on, bro.
Okay. All right. Okay. Not to draw this out too much. Not to draw this out too much. But it's like,
yeah, I still got to do I got to give you my second team center.
Okay.
But go ahead.
Okay. I'm gonna be real quick. You remember it was an episode of Little House on the Prairie, one of the latter seasons, right? Mary was blind. What her husband was, the blind dude, Adam. I think, yeah, they were walking. That's when they moved to town, this town to get work. So when Mary was by herself, I think. So these three men was messing with her and all of that. So Charles pulled up. Charles Ingalls pulled up on them and saw him. It was 3-on-1, and you know how small Charles Ingalls was. He could have used Hoss Cartwright then, but but you know, because Hoss could whoop him all by himself. But remember, he went. He said, "Mary, you going inside?" Mary went and ran inside, right? And when Mary ran inside, she was obviously distraught. Mr. Olsen was like, you know, Merlin Olsen.
Yeah.
Not Mr. Olsen. What's his name? Mr.
Oh God, I forgot his name.
Oh, Mr.
It's gonna come
Harvey,
to me.
Mr. But whatever it was. Anyway, you know, it's like, man, what's going on with you? Well, we came across these three men and paused out there and all of that. Then Merlin Olsen runs for the door. He looks back at Mr. Olsen, who was always henpecked by Miss Olsen.
Right.
He's like, you coming, Nails? You got to tell him, is he coming? Basically, in the scenario you laid, Brian Russell is Nails. You can't expect anything from him. You can't. Why would you gonna sit here and say they lost because of Brian Russell?
I'm saying that they lost because of Brian Russell. I'm saying that they lost because the supporting cast was not what the Bulls had. And that's not pointing. That ain't pointing out Brian Russell specifically. He's part of the problem, but not specifically.
Did have David Benoit and Shannon Anderson. They did have them dudes. But anyway, man, let me be quiet. Okay. So that's what we got. Call them long power for it. What we got?
Okay. And then my starting center, I had to put him on there on the team, even though it was late in his career. But I have to include my second team center, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. 6-time NBA champion, 2-time finals MVP, 6-time NBA MVP, 19-time All-Star, 10-time All-NBA first team, 5-time NBA defensive first team, 1970 Rookie of the Year, and a 2-time NBA scoring champion. 25 points per game, 11 rebounds per game, and 4 assists per game. The captain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, is my second team center. Any questions?
Absolutely not. You're never going to get me. Kareem is in that rarefied area. You're never going to get me to question anything about Kareem. But it's always this one caveat that everyone always overlooks regarding Kareem, right? And it makes me sick to my stomach. And I think you and I have touched on it before. But it's always, I always go back to 1985. Because you remember 1986, Boston was the greatest backcourt ever. Yeah. And on my list of teams, my greatest teams, they're the second best team I've ever seen in the era we watch basketball, only second to the 83 Sixers, right? But everyone forgets how after the Memorial Day massacre, Kareem was left for dead against those guys. And all he had against them was like one leg was Kurt Rambis and one leg Mitch Kupchak. That's all he had. The battle, Parrish, McHale, and Bird. And Bird. The man was 38 years old, and the Lakers had lost to Boston the previous year. They were swept by the Sixers the year before that. And he rose to the occasion at age 38. He turned back the clock to not only win the championship on the parquet floor, but to beat the Celtics as far as the Lakers are concerned the first time in their
Ever.
many finals meetings. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times people overlook that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do. I mean, 38 years old. You just said that. Can you imagine Kevin Durant doing that now after a bad performance in a game one?
Mm-hmm.
You know, a bad performance in a game one. Can he come back and rally the troops and lead a team to a championship? Because you got to remember, this is 85. They were still calling Magic tragic magic.
There you go.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people he didn't become Magic until like 87. Okay.
Correct.
He didn't. He was still tragic magic. He was still the one that would dribble the ball out when it would basically dribble out the ball and dribble out the time on the clock, just dribble it out, trying to look for somebody and then accidentally run the timeout. You know, that was still Magic. You know, he was Magic Johnson at that time. They would boo Magic sometimes at Laker games. You know, in the mid '80s, it was still Kareem's team, still, and it didn't become Magic's team until maybe '87. Okay, that's when it all changed.
And
So,
I know.
and Kareem, to your point, Kareem at 38 years old basically turned back the hands of time and basically willed that Laker team to finally not only beat Boston in the finals, but do it in Boston.
There you go. And I know, and as I've told you many times, and I'm probably in the minority as far as this is concerned, because I just feel a lot of times people get caught up in the fashion how something is done as opposed to getting it done, right?
Right.
You know, to me, I don't understand what the fuss is about, because to me, he is my GOAT. And I don't understand how he doesn't even come up. And I understand that perhaps his style wasn't aesthetically pleasing, perhaps, or exciting or anything like
Right.
that. But it's something about everyone in the gym and everyone watching knows what is about to happen, but it's not a darn thing you can do about it.
Right. I mean,
You know,
everybody, I mean, like, this, I forgot, I think it was Ralph Wiley who said that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is basically Miles Davis in short pants. Okay. That Miles Davis was famous for playing his trumpet with his back toward the crowd and just start playing. Okay. Kareem would just turn his back you down, and then here come the hook shot. And there's nothing you could do about it. There's nothing that you could do. I mean, it is like he is like the one of the two players in which they have a shot that they're famous for. You know, you got Kareem's guy hook and you got George Gervin's finger roll. You know, and that's it. You know, and people, if that is your signature move, and you still can't stop it, that's legendary material. That's legendary area. That's legend area right there.
absolutely. And I did you have any other strong considerations? Because I would assume that you probably gave reasonable consideration to both Shaq and David Robinson, perhaps.
Well, David Robinson and Shaq were definitely considered. And one of those it will be mentioned a little bit later as one of my reserves.
Okay, got it. Okay,
So
makes sense.
go ahead, and who is your two Eastern Conference reserves?
Two Eastern Conference reserves. Um, the first one is fairly easy, and I don't particularly like this guy. And he could be a starter on my team, but fair is fair, man. You got to be fair. None other than the King, LeBron James. That's my first reserve. You know, name it, he's done it, man. Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
Dunk. Other than the dunk contest, you name it, he's done it, man. And
Right.
for 4 rings, four MVPs, 4 Finals MVPs, 21 All-Star appearances, 21 All NBA bids,
Yeah.
3-time All-Star Game MVP, 6-time All Defense, and won the scoring title once. And he has 4 rings and 10 Finals appearances. And I mean, what else can you say?
What else can you say?
And it's unreal that very rarely does something meet the hype. He came into the league with these high expectations, and not only did he meet them, he blasted the expectations out of the darn water.
Exactly. If he would have done half of what he did, just
Mm-hmm.
half of what he did,
Mm-hmm.
you took everything that he did and divided it by two, it would still sort of exceed what people expected with the
Yes.
amount of hype that he had coming out of high school in 2003. You know, a lot of people, including myself, was very skeptical. They giving this kid all this hype, and I said I think I was talking to you. Why'd he end up like a Chris Mashburn?
You know, it's
You know,
unreal.
I mean, why he end up somebody like a Michael Olowokandi? You know, all this hype and everything coming out of school and everything, and he can come here and just basically suck. You know,
Yeah. Do
and he surpassed every expectation, surpassed every kind of every type of metric that you could for a high school player. Surpassed it with guys that would have been the number one pick coming out of college who played 4 years. He exceeded all of that. Okay,
insane.
going to the finals 10 times in a career. You know, he has played more NBA playoff games than several franchises.
And it's
It's
insane. Like
insane. It's
you
literally
say
insane.
you could cut the dude's resume in half, right?
Hmm.
He's if you cut it in half, he's still arguably a top 10 player if you cut it in half.
Yeah,
It's just like, and
because
then
you
it's
just
just like he's 41 years old and he just packed the Rockets up last week and sent them home. He packed
right,
them up, man. And it's
right.
just like he reminds me of, and I know I'd be having all these um um analogies. He
You call
reminds
for
me,
it's pop culture, Brett, and this is
but
what we're
but
about here.
but he reminds, I don't know, when I was a kid, I used to love Kung Fu Theater on USA Network. It used to come on
Yeah.
Saturdays and Sundays. I can't remember the name of the movie, but you remember the character Pai Mei, the old man that
Uh-huh.
could
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah.
And you remember the guy, he was fighting the dude the first time. He fought the dude went over there to fight Pai Mei the first time. Pai Mei whooped him and he ran and escaped. He went
Hmm.
back and studied Pai Mei's style for 10 years and studied the Crane style for 10 years. He
Right.
came back 10 years later, fought Pai Mei. He did much better. But Pai Mei could move his weak spot, so he could never find it. So he say,
Right.
"You're much better this time." But this time, Pai Mei killed him because he was like, okay, he had 10 years. He came back this time. It was a little too close for comfort.
Right.
He might get me. If I let him
You
live,
might,
he might get
yeah.
me next time. But
Right.
then his son came after that to avenge his father, and he beat Pai Mei because he used a combination of the masculine crane technique that his father taught him, but also the the feminine what is it? The feminine the
So
feminine
you
style his mother taught him. So
right.
Pai Mei, guys didn't usually use the feminine style that the
Right.
that the females fought with. So it was a combination of that. And he killed Pai Mei because Pai Mei
Right.
wasn't expecting a guy to fight with that. But
Right.
anyway, LeBron reminds me of this dude because everybody just keep waiting for him to get too old, you know?
I mean,
And he just
you've got a guy that spends $2 million in the offseason just on his body,
he's still going, man.
and he's still going. You
And
know what I'm saying? And we're never going to see anybody like that ever. We're not.
and
You know, and that's what I told my son. Is like what you're seeing right now with LeBron James, who has been playing as long as my son has been alive. Okay. What you're seeing right now is something that we will never see. It is like when we used to sit down and watch Kareem because we thought we would never see anybody like Kareem ever again. And for the most part, we haven't. But LeBron, this guy, like I said earlier, the most physically talented basketball player we've ever had. He's not the most talented, but the most physically talented. Okay? You're never going to see anybody like that ever again. Ever. Period. And I will stand by that.
but think about it, man. When he first started, we both still had hair.
Yeah, no. You
I've
know, we
been
both
bald. I've been bald for years. And my girlfriend, I was thinking about going to Turkey to get the hair restoration surgery. She told me I should just get a man unit. I'm not getting a man unit. But
No, bruh.
that's how long he's
No.
been around, man.
Think about it. Not only did I have hair, my beard was dark brown. Okay, that was gray.
Like crazy. And I know a lot of it is attributed to the fact it's much far less physical now. It's more of a European style of ball,
Yeah.
and the players are not as good anymore. But but but
Right.
but still, credit is where it's due. But anyway, first spot LeBron James.
Okay.
Second spot, I strongly considered putting him on my second unit ahead of Ewing. Second spot, I don't care what anyone says. Dude should have been on the top 75. Dwight Howard. I don't care what anybody says. At his peak, he probably was more dominant than Ewing at his peak. You know
Yeah,
what I
this
mean?
peak.
Because
Doing the Orlando years,
yes.
definitely.
I mean, Dwight Howard, one ring, 3-time defensive players of the year. Now, take into account that Rudy Gobert has 4. Now, are they remotely in the same league?
Not even close.
Not even defensively are they in the same league.
You know, are they in the same league? No, that's like Dwight Howard is in Times Square, New York City, and Rudy Gobert is in France. They're not the same place. Not even close.
Correct.
They're not even not even close.
Eight All NBAs, man. 8 All-Star games. 5-time All Ds. Now, you could possibly question his longevity. He led the league in blocks twice, led the league in rebounds 5 times. Just in the Orlando years, the man made the finals with Rashard Lewis as his 4-man and Skip the Malou as his point.
Ray for Austin. Yep.
He made the final, and Stan Van Gundy, known as Stan Van Gundy to be, he made the finals with that. You know what I mean? And Dwight Howard, man, I considered mourning. I gave some consideration to mourning. I didn't, and then my honorable mention, like T-Mac, Grant Hill, Penny. T-Mac was kind of more of like Eastern 2, but split between Orlando and Houston. Then you got Grant and Penny were beset by injuries, and then just shout out to all the other players, like your favorite players, like guys like Dominique Wilkins, Dominique, Bernard King, man.
Yeah.
Sidney Moncrief, man. Vern Fleming, just guys like that.
There's some ballers, man.
And my main man, Bobby Jones, man. My main man, Bobby Jones, man.
Right.
But, you can't have everybody. So that's pretty much that's my team. What do you have for your reserves?
My reserves are as follows, and the people that were under serious consideration was Tim Hardaway, Mitch Richmond, Dan Marley, Chris Mullin, Rolando Blackman, and Adrian Dantley. Those are the guys that I seriously considered as on my reserves, but I didn't go there. Okay. My first reserve is the glove, Gary Payton. Okay. 9-time All-Star, 2-time NBA first team, 1-time NBA champion, 9-time All-Defense first team, 2000 assist leader, 1996 steals leader, averaged 16 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 7 assists. I wanted to add a little bit of defense to this team, so I decided Gary Payton, and plus I need another guy that'll charge up the troops and with a little bit of trash talk, a little bit of challenging some people.
I can't argue with that one, man.
Okay.
Great player.
And my other reserve is none other than Shaq Diesel himself, Shaquille O'Neal. 4-time NBA champion, 3-time NBA Finals MVP, 2000 NBA MVP, 15-time All-Star, 3-time NBA All-Star MVP, 8-time first team All-NBA, and 2-time NBA scoring champ. 24 points per game, 11 rebounds, and 2 blocks. I had to find a way to put Shaq on here somehow. I seriously considered David Robinson, but
Shaq
Shaquille
is better.
O'Neal is better. You know, we got to have a little bit of character, a little bit of comic relief too. At the same time, just a devastatingly physical player, obviously, and I had to have Shaq on there somehow.
Oh man,
But I
but
could, but at the same time, I could not put him at. You can't put him at any other position but center, and I cannot in good faith put him ahead of either Akeem Olajuwon or Kareem. I
no,
can't do it.
no, you can't. I mean, absolutely, no, you can't. But I have a great team, but
Yeah,
you got Magic, Kobe,
Clyde.
Dream, Kareem, and Shaq.
Yeah.
Damn. Like, that's a lot of
Also,
firepower.
and Alex English.
That's a lot of firepower to overcome, man. It's a lot,
No,
you know.
yours is just grit. That's yours is a typical Eastern Conference team
Mm-hmm.
with grit and grind.
Mm-hmm.
That's y'all grit and grind. And and you having Scottie Pippen as your second team point guard, that's very interesting, and that's going to cause a lot of matchup problems.
Because we need the bodies. I just went in like, okay, we need the bodies to deal with Magic, man. Because the
Right.
way I got my team constructed, we could, Jordan could spend some time on them.
Yeah.
Um, Doc maybe could, but he would be my last resort. But Jordan could spend some time on him. Pip obviously could,
Yeah.
LeBron could as well. They could spend some time on him.
Right.
And Pip could, and then maybe even try to steal a few possessions with Wade on defense for him.
Right.
Just here and there.
Now,
You can't leave him out there too long.
did you come up with a coach?
My coaches, it's quite easy. My two coaches, quite easy. Head coach Billy Cunningham, assistant coach, his former assistant Chuck Daly. Easy.
Okay. Okay.
Good.
My coach, of course, is Pat Riley.
Okay.
I got to go with Pat Riley, and with a coach and with a lineup like this, my assistant coach is Doug Moe.
Well, I love Doug Moe.
That's
And,
my
and,
assistant is Doug Moe.
and, and for everyone saying where's Phil Jackson, I understand that, but
Yeah.
his resume is littered with, okay, how many people he coached that's on this list? Let's see, Jordan Pippen on my side, and
Kobe and Shaq on my
did
side.
yeah, man, no, no, you know what I mean? Just no,
Okay. Now,
so
your dunk contest. Okay. I am very curious to see who would be in your dunk contest.
oh man, this is easy here, man. My three dunkers are as follows.
And
Then
I'm going to say this right now. If they did have a contest against our participants, I think the East would win hands down.
oh, easy.
East would win
Easy.
hands down. So, but go ahead.
Yeah. I got the originator himself. I got Dr. J. Then I
Mm-hmm.
got the human highlight film, Dominique Wilkins.
I can't hang with that. Go ahead.
And then
Just with those two,
and
I'm
then
done.
I got see what I like about these dunkers, right? I got Vince Carter.
Yeah.
It's my third. But what's good about these three, which is very rare in terms of dunkers. And your dunkers got to be good when you can leave Jordan off. And I didn't even really consider Jordan. But all three of these guys are competition and game dunkers.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas, Clyde, Clyde, the competition, he was solid. But game, man, in the game, man, Clyde was like, man, he was off the charts. And then that also applied to a degree to Sean Kemp as well. But those are my three
Right.
dunkers, and I think it would probably come down to Doc and Vince probably. And honestly, I would love to go with the old man. I would love to go. But you can't count out a man that went from the free throw line to Chuck Taylor's in 74. You can never count that
No.
dude out. But I
No.
probably would have to give an edge to Vince overall. What do you have?
Okay. My three dunkers. One is Clyde Drexler, like you talked
Okay.
about. Clyde Drexler. Second one, he won the slam dunk contest twice. Okay, a lot of people forgot about
Richardson.
that, and it's Jason Richardson.
Okay.
Jason Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the third one who won the very first NBA dunk contest is a
Larry
member of the
Nance.
Phoenix Suns, Larry Nance, who has the coolest nickname according to Sports Reference I have ever heard. Not only was he known as the Flying Sun, but he was also known as the Hayatola of Slamola.
Man, he
Larry
was
Nance was nice.
he could get up there, man. And I mean, he could get way up there, man.
I
You
considered
know,
I considered Zach LaVine. I considered him. Okay, but at the last, I say I can't go. I seriously consider him because Zach LaVine won it twice.
he's a good
Okay,
dunker.
but
Kind
over
of
Larry
gimmicky.
Nance, I can't do it.
You can't go wrong with Larry Nance, man. He could really go, man. And he was a very good player too,
Yeah,
especially in Phoenix. They
yeah,
kind of when he got to Cleveland, he kind of had to change his role a bit when he got to
right,
Cleveland. And he was still very good in Cleveland too. But
right.
man, in Phoenix, he was like a very, very good. I think he made a few All-Star teams if I remember, because I know he made at least two All-Star teams. But then when he once he once he got to once he got to Cleveland, how you don't have Larry Nance in here? I don't have time to look it up. I'm trying to look it up. I'm trying to look it up in oh, Larry Nance. I put Lance. So let's see.
Okay, Larry Nance.
Let's see. Yeah, he did. Flats, three-time All-Star, three-time All-D. Very good
Yeah.
player. Yes. Hmm.
So no, so you may win this dunk contest. I think I might be winning the 3-point shootout.
Okay.
Okay.
I like mine. Who
So
you
so
have?
who you got? For who you
I
got?
got
Eastern Conference 3-point shooters.
I gotta believe it. I can't believe it until I see it. I know you think Steph will win, but I got Larry Bird, man. Dude,
Okay.
dude won the first three, and he won. And he won. He didn't even take his warm-ups off, man. So I got Larry Bird. Then I got Craig Hodges, who for years
Wow.
had the
Yeah.
most in the round for years. And
Yeah.
then I got my third man. It was really hard. I was thinking Mark Price, but
He
then
did win it. He did win
but
it.
then I was like, man, let me show another underrated guy some love. I got Glenn Rice.
Okay. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he was an outstanding 3-point shooter.
Hmm.
Outstanding. My 3-point shooters, obviously, first one, Steph Curry.
No brainer.
Okay. That's a no-brainer. Next one, I think is another no-brainer, is Peja Stojakovic.
Okay.
He did win it twice.
Okay. Who you got third? I'd like to hear that.
Dale Ellis.
Well, hell, I can't go wrong with Dale Ellis. Okay. I figured Dale was going to be in there. Hell, you probably are.
I seriously considered Damian Lillard.
So
I
Clay never
seriously
got
consider
any. Clay didn't get any consideration.
who
Clay
that?
Thompson.
No,
Clay Thompson.
no.
Any particular reason? Seemed like you made a face of disdain
I'm
when I
not a
even
big
brought up the
fan of
notion.
his because he's so streaky. He's such of a streaky shooter.
Okay.
I would have, I would have gone with Dan Marley before I would have went with Klay Thompson.
Okay. The only drawback I have of Page is like when that game 7 against the Lakers, man, he was hitting the side of the backboard, man.
Yeah,
And then you remember in
yeah,
2011, I told you earlier that the insertion of JJ Barea flipped that whole series around Dallas
right.
versus Miami. Carlisle had the bench Pager because they had lost bad in game 1. They were down 15 in game 2, and he benched Pager in game 2 pretty much for the rest of the series in
Right.
favor of JJ Barrera, and then that turned the entire series on his head.
Okay, so to recap, go ahead and give me your All Stars, and I will go ahead and give you mine.
Okay, my
Go ahead.
All-Star starters: Isaiah Thomas, Detroit Pistons; Michael Jordan, the Bulls; Dr. J. Moses and Charles Barkley for small forward, center, and power forward, respectively, Philadelphia 76ers. Second
Okay.
unit, Scottie Pippen from the Bulls for point. Two guard, Dwayne Wade from the Heat. Small forward, Larry Bird, Celtics. Power forward, Kevin McHale, Celtics. Center, Patrick Ewing, New York Knickerbockers. And
Okay.
then for the bench, LeBron James, Cleveland Cavaliers / Miami Heat, and Dwight Howard, the Orlando Magic rendition.
All right. So, and then my lineup for the Western Conference, my starting lineup would be as follows: point guard, Magic Johnson of the Lakers; shooting guard, Kobe Bryant of the Lakers; small forward, Clyde Drexler of the Blazers and Rockets; power forward, Tim Duncan of the San Antonio Spurs, and my center is Akeem Olajuwon of the Houston Rockets. Second team, point guard John Stockton of the Jazz, shooting guard Alex English of the Denver Nuggets, small forward Sean Kemp of the Seattle Supersonics, power forward Karl Malone of the Utah Jazz, and center the captain himself Kareem Abdul-Jabbar of the Los Angeles Lakers, and my reserves Gary Payton of the Seattle Sonics and Shaquille O'Neal of the Los Angeles Lakers. So there you have it, our All-Stars for the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast All-Star Selection Show. Chuck, this is really fun, man.
A lot of fun, and like always, learned a couple things that I didn't previously know. And
Yeah.
you tend to have a penchant for you know,
Pulling the rabbit out of the hat, so to speak.
yeah,
right?
you have a penchant for that, man. So it's always enjoyable to talk shop with you because I always learn something or see something from a perspective that I didn't previously consider.
Okay, so we're gonna take a little short break, and then coming right back, we're gonna close out the show with we're gonna do something. We're gonna talk a little television, right? And we're gonna talk about something that celebrated an anniversary this past week. A favorite television program of both of ours growing up. It was celebrating an anniversary of his debut some 65 years ago. So just stay tuned for that. And you're listening to the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast here on the Sports History Network.
Not bad.
Yeah,
Not
man.
bad.
Not bad at all.
I got to kind of cut down on my tangents a little bit, though.
No,
so.
man, your tangents will make this go, man. The tangents will make this
Okay.
entertaining. So the pop culture references, man, do them.
Okay,
I have no
cool.
problem with that. You know what I'm saying?
Cool. That's what's up.
I have
Yeah, man.
no
But
problem with that
went
at all.
went really good, man. Really good, man. So, yeah, man, you can't argue with any of these picks on either side, man. You can't
Nah,
really argue with anything,
nah.
you know.
The thing, like I said, man, it was like the hard part was trying to figure out some of these positions because I had too many for one position and other position was very slim.
Yeah,
You
because I
know,
know you had your point guards were like pretty much set in stone. Then you had
centers
an
were set in
overage.
stone.
Yeah,
I had
you had
too
an
many.
overage at center and power forward.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then power. Then you had to throw Clyde in there for some for it. Then
For
by the
small
time we
forward.
started watching basketball in the 80s, Gervin was on the downside. Still good, but on the
I thought
downside.
I really considered Gervin, but
Okay.
thinking about it, it's like by the time we really started watching basketball, he was on the downside of his career.
Yeah, and then
You know.
you could consider Durant, but then also for you to omit him and the reason why, that's totally justified. Totally, so.
So you ready to knock this out?
Yes, sir.
All right. And we're back here at the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast here on the Sports History Network. I am Dana Augusta, joined once again by my main man, Charles Combs. And we just got through talking a little basketball, giving you our all-time All-Star selections. And now we're going to talk a little television. And this past week, actually on April 29th to be exact, was the 65th anniversary of the debut of Wide World of Sports. Now, for someone growing up, as much of a television fanatic I was as a kid, Wide World of Sports on Saturday afternoons was essentially appointment television, especially during the summer. Growing up in Louisiana, dealing with rain and stuff every Saturday afternoon, it would be raining during the summer and too hot to do really anything outside until later. So we used to watch something called Wide World of Sports, and hosted by the legendary broadcaster Jim McKay. It made its debut April 29th, 1961. It was on the air until June of 1997. The first thing they ever broadcast, the first event was the Penn and Drake relays, which was track competitions. And from that point on, Wide World of Sports was a staple in my house every Saturday afternoon. In the Augusta household growing up during the 1980s, it essentially went like this: Saturday morning cartoons. Then, and Chuck, I know that you agree with me on this. After Saturday morning cartoons, you turn the channel to American Bandstand. Then after that, it was Soul Train.
Yes, sir.
And then after that, you had lunch. And then right around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you heard Wide World of Sports and Jim McKay. And there's a little bit of a trivia question that I meant to ask you right at the outset, but I just forgot. So I'm just going to bring it up. Okay. Everybody knows the guy, but they don't know his name. And the guy that I'm talking about, I think everybody knows when we're talking about Wide World of Sports, and why a lot of people just watched the theme because they wanted to see this guy wipe out. Okay, his name is Vinko Bogataj, and he holds the record for being shown on television more than any other person ever, more than 3,000 times. But nobody knows who he is. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, it is this ill-fated ski jumper who crashed doing the theme of Wide World of Sports when Jim McKay says the agony of defeat. Okay. And he's been televised on television more than a lot of people that have ever lived. But people know who he is, but they don't know him. They don't know his name. And a very funny story about him was that in 1991, they were doing a 40th anniversary, a 30th anniversary special for Wide World of Sports, and they were going to interview him in a studio. He was on his way to the studio, and he gets into a car accident, right? Nothing serious. He didn't get hurt or anything, but he actually made the interview. And he made the comment. He said, "The only times I have ever been on ABC, I crashed." So that was kind of funny, that the 2 times he was on Wide World of Sports, he ended up crashing. So that was kind of funny. But when you think back of Wide World of Sports, what are some of the things that you remember?
Well, just everything, man, because you could get everything. Like they'll show a lot of the fights, like the Hearns and Leonard fights, and I remember they covered Larry Holmes versus Jerry Cooney, and
they did a lot of boxing
and all of that. But then they would cover like pretty much everything. You would see the Iron Man competitions. Then
I love those.
After they've done the swim and the bike ride, then they're trying to run the last part. Their body just started falling apart. Then you would even see bizarre competitions. Like I will never forget. Right? It was, what was it? It was like 1984ish, right? And at the time, Franco Harris had moved on from the Steelers to the Seattle Seahawks. I still remember this number. He was 364 yards away from breaking Jim Brown's all-time rushing record at the time.
Right.
And ironically, it's the 364 yards that he never got. He still is behind Jim Brown to this day. He never got him.
Right.
But at the time, I guess due to him closing in on the record, there was a lot of animosity between he and Jim. So they challenged each other to a 40-yard dash race. And I cannot find this anywhere or online. I cannot find it anywhere. I still remember my dad, we were watching it. My dad was like, yeah, Jim Brown for to whoop him, and this, that, and other. They take off running, man. Jim, they even for like the first 20 yards. Then Franco starts pulling away, and then Jim tried to turn on the afterburners, and he blew the hamstring. He never
Oh my
finished the race.
God.
And my dad was mad because he's a big Jim Brown fan. You know,
Right.
and it was crazy. We all laughed because it was hilarious to us. And it's like, imagine if that happened. Like if that happened now,
Oh man,
you
it'll
would,
be pay-per-view. It'll be a pay-per-view event,
but
right?
you would be every meme. And like
Yes.
if you get out there and break down like that, I guess he has spent too much time on acting sets because it's great an athlete as
And the
Jim
thing,
Brown
and
was,
Jim Brown at the time in 1984 was he's Jim Brown, and he's still in shape.
but he had been retired for years.
He had been retired for what, 20 years by this point? Because he
Probably
retired because he won the '64 championship with the Browns. He played one more year in '65, so
hmm
he had been retired for 19 years.
so he had been retired, and then no matter how great of an athlete you are, you're going against an active player,
An active
albeit
player. Yeah,
well
he's
past
30.
his prime himself, but
Yeah, he
still.
was what 36 years old at the time.
Correct. Correct. And he was I think Walter Payton was something like 900 yards away.
Right,
I mean Franco was significantly ahead of Walter Payton,
Walter
and
Payton.
Walton, of course, Payton eventually broke Jim Brown's record, but Franco Harris, even if you look on the all-time rushing list, he never passed Jim Brown. He never passed him.
I mean, some of the things that they covered on, you know, Wide World Sports. First television show to air Wimbledon. First one to cover the Indy 500. First to cover the Final Four. I did not know in 1962.
hmm
First to cover the Daytona 500, the U.S. Figure Skating Championships, the Little League World Series, which I still watch to this day,
hmm
and they actually covered the Grey Cup in
hmm
1962, which was really cool. Now, I guarantee you one thing. If there is something that I would basically was appointment television for me when it came down to Wide World of Sports was one man, and that was Evil Knievel. And every time they announced Evil Knievel was going to be jumping at some kind of fair in, you know, Ontario, Canada, right? I'm tuning in. When he tried to jump the Grand Canyon on the 10 speed, I'm there. I want to see this. When he tried to jump the Snake River Canyon on the Sky Cycle or whatever, which was basically a rocket, and it failed, you know, or the time that he crashed when he tried to jump the double-decker buses at Wembley Stadium in London, which in Frank Gifford was damn near in tears because when he crashed and broke like several bones in his body for trying to jump the double decker buses in Wembley. Those are things that I remember that were part of my cherished childhood. Watching Wide World of Sports with my grandpa and then times my dad. But all of the great boxing matches, as you mentioned it, all of the really good boxing matches that
hmm
they had on Wide World of Sports, going all the way, showing Ali fighting Ken Norton Part 2 and Ali beating them in San Diego in 73.
hmm
I mean 74. It was just so many great memories. And then you remember the spinoffs that the other networks had.
hmm
NBC had at Sports World, remember?
hmm
And
Yep.
CBS had CBS Sports Saturday and CBS Sports Sunday,
Correct.
which was basically pale comparisons to what ABC had with Wide World of Sports and Jim McKay. They tried, but it wasn't like the original. It wasn't like the real thing, the real one. It wasn't Wide World of Sports. And the theme song, coolest theme song ever. When you heard it, you know what was coming on.
Dude, that spill that guy took. How did he live through that is beyond me. That spill that he took.
And
Do
he's
you know whether or not he
worldwide.
was severely injured or not
No, he
in that
wasn't.
fall or not?
I mean, he fell, and it was just it looked worse than what it was. He had a concussion, which was the extent
Of
of it.
course he did. Good Lord. Good Lord. Of course he did, man. He fell off the top of a house. Looked like it was like a house looking thing.
Yeah, it
He
was a
fell
ski
off of.
jump. It was a
Yeah,
ski jump, and he took off, and then the slope goes down so they could land. And yeah, he was. What happened was, I read the article about it. He was coming down, and the track was too fast, okay, and he tried to squat down a little bit further to kind of slow down, and when he squatted down, he lost his balance, and he just fell over. He just toppled over the platform and onto the ground, and. And when Jim McKay says the agony of defeat, dun, 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 it's hilarious. But it is part of our childhood, and a lot of people just would watch the show just to see that part. Then they're done.
I still remember he went one way and his helmet went the other, man. It was like, but how do you get the courage to get back on there and do it after?
After that,
no
I've been
way.
done, dog. After that, I'm retired.
I
Before
am so
before
done.
I hit the ground, I am signing my retirement
Man,
papers.
I wouldn't even watch a skiing event after that, man. It's just too traumatic, man. But yeah, it was definitely a great staple, man, and a much simpler
Much
and a
simpler
much
time.
better time, especially as far as sports are concerned. Yes.
Exactly. And that will do it for this edition of the podcast. Chuck, another great episode in the can, man. Thank you so much for joining me.
Man, always a pleasure, man. And just it was a great thing to just run through all of these great players and briefly recount them and all of that. So wonderful episode.
Oh, man. All right, man. And we're going to take another short break and we'll come back to wrap things up here on the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. We will bring you the best of sports from back in the day. Okay.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.